The United Nations says $1 billion is needed in humanitarian assistance for hundreds of thousands of Rohingya Muslims. Nearly 700,000 of them fled Myanmar's Rakhine state last August, citing rape, torture and murder by the Myanmar army.
Officials say they want to relocate some 100,000 refugees who face the danger of landslides and flooding during the monsoon season. Australian Red Cross aid worker Don Johnston is in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh. I spoke to him earlier and he says there are almost 900,000 people in the refugee camps there.
700,000 of these folks just arrived within the last 6 months, and there are already 200,000 people from Rakhine State who are living here beforehand. When you're in the refugee camp, it's situated on a series of hills, and at the top of these hills you can look out 360 degrees in every direction, and it goes to the horizon.
Can you describe for us the conditions that these people are living under?
Well, it's pretty miserable. You have, again, almost 900,000 people who are crowded cheek to jowl, shoulder to shoulder, and they're living in structures that consist of pieces of bamboo with cardboard, plastic sheeting, perhaps some corrugated iron lashed to it with cord, and living on slopes on hills, trying to with very few square meters of covered living space to separate themselves from their neighbors and to care for their family. It's really basic.
There are concerns around the cyclone season approaching. What are the risks that the people in the camps are facing once that cyclone season starts to bear down?
Well, certainly there's going to be the issue of flooding. When the rains come, certainly some of the houses and areas that people are living in are going to be underwater. Certainly the heavy winds that could accompany a cyclone and the monsoon season would rip through and destroy many of the shelters. Again, these are shelters of plastic bags, cardboard, sheeting, and the risk would be that they would tear the shelters apart. Number 2 or 3 is that many of these shelters are constructed on the sides of hills, and the risk of landslides in these areas is quite high.
So essentially, when the cyclone season starts to bear down, it will be very hard for these people to seek protection from the weather anywhere.
There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to go other than where they are now.
So what's being done to prepare for the cyclone season?
Well, there's six different things that are being done right now to prepare for the cyclone season. Number 1, here at the Red Cross, we're pre-positioning a set of emergency stocks, food, medicine, household items, shelter-related items, plastic sheeting, etc., which can be distributed in case of the disaster of a cyclone or the monsoon hitting. Number 2, we've got field hospitals in the camp, and we're securing them so that they can withstand the monsoon and the cyclone season. Number 3, we're distributing a series of materials to folks: sandbags, rope, plastic sheeting, bamboo, tie wire, things that they can use to secure their households and upgrade the shelters that they are living in. We're doing this to several thousand families. Also, we're providing 2 different types of information. First, that there's going to be no ability to evacuate these folks to another area if in the likelihood of a storm. And then secondly, what we're doing is giving them basic techniques that they can use to mitigate the damage to their shelters and to ensure the safety and well-being of their families. They're quite simple measures. Most of these folks are living in shelters that are constructed with bamboo poles and plastic sheeting on the top. And the idea is that they would be able to take, in about 2 hours, take the roof of their house and drop it down to, say, a meter, 3 or 4 feet above the ground, reinforce the sides of the walls with sand-filled sandbags to kind of bunkerize the walls to protect them, tie down the walls that they have and anchor them into the ground to reinforce them so that they would be able to ride out the worst of the storm. Also, the Bangladeshi Red Crescent is really key in this endeavor. We're rolling out a series of trainings at the household and local community leader level, helping them to identify these means that they can use to help themselves. Also, lastly, the sixth is the authorities have identified those who are living in most at-risk areas, and they're in the process of preparing a site adjacent to the camp where people are living now, on which up to 20,000 people who are most at risk can be relocated.
How much of a risk is the spread of disease during that cyclone season, especially when the refugee camps are essentially potentially going to be decimated?
Well, the risk is quite high. I think the real worry on everyone's mind is the possible spread of outbreak of cholera, given the lack of access to really well-established sanitary facilities. Most of the toilets in the camp are long drops and would be potentially filled with water if there were very severe rains. That, of course, would wash things out and could make the situation really quite dire.
That's Johnston there from the Australian Red Cross.